Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep. Welcome to the daily quiz discussion for the 15th of November 2022. Before we begin, an important announcement. Tomorrow, that is the 16th of November, join us live at 8 p.m. for the 94th episode of the International Relations This Week session. This session will be handled by our International Relations expert faculty, Chetan sir. To not miss out on this session, you can set a reminder. You can find the link in the description box below. Beginning with the first question of the day. The question reads, which of the following statements is or are correct with respect to right to freedom of religion in India? There are two question statements given here. The first one reads, Article 25 of the Indian Constitution guarantees the freedom of conscience, the freedom to profess, practice and propagate religion to all citizens subject to reasonable restrictions. Statement 2. The Constitution of India guarantees the right to freedom of religion to not only individuals but also religious groups in India. Please have a look at the options given. Now, what is the context? Both these articles from the Hindu as well as the Indian Express take note of a recent petition filed by an advocate in the Supreme Court. The petition called for a special law to be enacted against forced conversion or for the inclusion of this act of forced conversion as an offence in the Indian Penal Code. Hearing this petition, the Supreme Court bench noted that religious conversions by force, allurement or fraud may ultimately affect the security of the nation as well as the freedom of religion and conscience of citizens. The Supreme Court noted that such forced conversions goes against the rights of the citizens as enshrined in Article 14, 21 and 25. Please note, Article 25 of the Indian Constitution provides for the freedom of conscience, the freedom to profess, practice and propagate religion to all citizens. However, this is subject to certain reasonable restrictions. They are subject to public order, health and morality. Also note that the 1997 judgment by a constitution bench of the Supreme Court in the Stanislas vs. State of Madhya Pradesh case noted that the word propagate used in Article 25 of the Indian Constitution gives a person the right to transmit or spread one's religion by an exposition of its tenets, but not by allurement or force. Word propagate cannot be misunderstood as the right to convert another person to one's own religion. In this regard, the Supreme Court bench has asked the central government to file an affidavit detailing what action it proposes to take to curb forced conversions. With this understanding, let's get back to our question. From our discussion, it becomes clear that the first statement is correct. Consider the second statement. This statement is also right because under Article 26 of the Indian Constitution, every religious denomination have been given certain rights which include the right to form and maintain institution for religious and charitable intents, the right to manage its own affairs in the matter of religion, and the right to acquire immovable and movable property, as well as to administer such property according to the law. Hence, the Constitution provides right to freedom of religion to religious groups also. Since the question asks for the correct statements, the answer to this question would be option C, both 1 and 2. Moving on to the second question. The question reads, consider the following statements with respect to global warming and select the correct statements. There are two question statements given here. The first one reads, there has been a steady annual increase in global surface temperature in the last 20 years, with 2021 being the hottest year on record since record keeping began in 1880. The second statement reads, the warming in the Arctic region has been much faster than in the rest of the world. Please have a look at the options given. Now, what is the context? In the backdrop of the ongoing climate summit in Egypt, this article in the data point series of the Hindu takes note of vital indicators of global climate change, which include increasing atmospheric CO2 concentration, which have reached almost 419 parts per million, the rising global surface temperature, According to NASA, 19 of the hottest years have occurred since 2000, with the exception of 1998. Note, the year 2020, tied with 2016, are the hottest years on record since record keeping began in 1880. Also, ocean heat content has been on the steady increase, while Arctic sea ice mass has been reducing and sea height has been increasing. Please have a look at the trends given here. Coming back to the question, from our discussion, it is clear that the statement 1 is wrong. Why? Because the hottest year on record is not 2021, but it is 2020 and 2016. Consider the second statement. The second statement is correct. Over the last 30 years or so, the Arctic region has warmed at roughly twice the rate as the entire globe. This phenomenon is referred to as Arctic amplification. Since the question asks for the correct statements, the answer to this question would be option B, 2 only. Moving on to the third question. The question reads, consider the following statements with respect to mangrove trees. There are three question statements given here. The first one reads, Parry is a special adaptation observed in mangrove trees to help them reproduce successfully in the high saline environments. Statement 2. As per the latest Forest Survey of India report, mangrove cover in India has decreased as compared to the previous assessment. Statement 3. Avicennia, Rhizopora, Soneratia and Brugueria are some of the mangrove tree species found in India. Which of the above statements are correct? Please have a look at the options given. Now, what is the context? This article from the PIB takes note of a study conducted by scientists at the BSIP, which is an autonomous institute of the Department of Science and Technology, which notes that certain mangrove species present in Chilika and Sundarbans along the east coast of India, as well as Dwarka and Porbandar along the west coast of India, are likely to face the challenge of reduction of their habitat. Also, the study notes that the habitat of these mangrove species and their distribution will shift landward by 2070. This, the study attributes to the decline in suitable habitats, which can happen due to the precipitation and sea level changes caused by global climate change. In this regard, the study calls for the implementation of mitigation and adaptation strategies in the identified hotspot for conserving the coastal wetlands and the mangrove trees. Coming back to the question. The first statement is correct. Parry is a special adaptation observed in Rhizopora species of mangrove trees, wherein seeds germinate even before they are shed from the tree. This adaptation allows the Rhizopora mangrove trees to produce viable seedlings even before they detach from the mother plant. This ensures higher success rates of germination and growth in the high saline environments. Consider the second statement. This statement is wrong. Why? Because as per the latest Forest Survey of India report, the mangrove cover in the country has increased by 1.10% as compared to the previous assessment. The third statement is correct. These are some of the mangrove tree species found in India. Since the question asks for the correct statements, the answer to this question would be option C, 1 and 3 only. Moving on to the fourth question. The question reads, which of the following statements is or are correct about the recently declared National Sports Awards? The two statements are as follows. Statement 1. Major Dhyanchand Khel Ratna Award is the highest sporting honor of India and it has been awarded to Shri Sharad Kamal Achanta for the year 2022. Statement 2. The overall top performing state in interstate tournaments is given the Maulana Abdul Kalam Azad Trophy. Please have a look at the options given. What is the context? Recently, the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports announced National Sports Award 2022. And this year, the Major Dhyanchand Khel Ratna Award will be given to table tennis player Sharad Kamal Achanta. Also note, 25 other sports persons will also receive Arjuna Awards for outstanding performance in sports and games. While Major Dhyan Chand Khel Ratna Award is given for spectacular and most outstanding performance in the field of sports by a sportsperson over the period of the previous 4 years, Arjuna Award is given for good performance. We also have the Dronacharya Award for outstanding coaches as well as the Dhyan Chand Award for lifetime achievement in sports and games. In recognition of institutions which support sports, the Rashtriya Khel Protsahan Puruskar is given to corporate entities, Sports Control Board, as well as NGOs which promote sports both at state as well as national level. Then we also have the Maulana Abdul Kalam Azad Trophy, which is given to the overall top performing university in inter-university tournaments. Coming back to the question. From our discussion, it becomes clear that statement 1 is correct while statement 2 is wrong. Why? Because Maulana Abdul Kalam Azad Trophy is given to the overall top performing university in inter-university tournaments. Since the question asks for the correct statements, the answer to this question would be option A, 1 only. Moving on to the last question of the day. This is a question from the UPSC 2019 Prelims paper. The question reads, the ninth schedule was introduced in the Constitution of India during the Prime Ministership of. The four options are as follows. A. Jawaharlal Nehru. B. Lal Bahadur Shastri. C. Indira Gandhi. And D. Morarji Desai. Yesterday, as part of our discussion for the fact of the day, we had taken up the topic of ninth schedule. Please note, the ninth schedule contains a list of central and state laws which cannot be challenged in courts. It was added into the Indian Constitution via the first Constitutional Amendment Act of 1951. Who was the Prime Minister during 1951? It was none other than Jawaharlal Nehru. Hence, the answer is option A. Moving on to the fact of the day, financing India's infrastructure needs. Recently, the World Bank came up with a report titled Financing India's Infrastructure Needs, Constraints to Commercial Financing and Prospects for Policy Action. The report notes that by the year 2036, more than 600 million people will be living in urban cities of India. This will represent around 40% of India's total population. This is likely to put additional pressure on the already stretched urban infrastructure and services of Indian cities. There will be increased demand for clean drinking water, reliable power supply, as well as efficient and safe transportation system. To be able to meet these demands on a sustainable basis, there is the need for an increase in urban infrastructure projects. And in this regard, the World Bank report forecasts that India would need to boost its annual investment in city infrastructure by more than 400%. That is, from the current average of 10.6 million to around 55 billion for the next 15 years. However, there are critical challenges in this direction. Let us understand what these challenges are. The first challenge is the extreme reliance on central and state government financing. Central and state governments finance over 75% of city infrastructure, while the urban local bodies are able to finance just 15%, and 5% comes through private investment, which is very low. Now, there are certain factors which are contributing to low private finance in India's urban infrastructure investment. Now, let us understand what they are. The relatively low charges for municipal service, as well as a weak regulatory framework, are adding to the weak financial viability and attractiveness to private investment. In this direction, the report calls for certain policy actions to make urban infrastructure sector more attractive to private investments. This is all we have for today's discussion. Thank you for being with us.